I have built the best possible free hit team for game week 6, so make sure you guys like the video. Okay, so let's get into it with the defense and keeper situation. And I'll be honest, I've gone with double Bournemouth, and I think this will surprise a lot of people because when I was doing research on Bournemouth as a defensive unit, it surprised me how good they actually were. So far this season, Bournemouth had conceded the third least or lowest expected goals conceded with 3.65. In comparison, Arsenal, one of the better sides in the league, probably the best defensive side in the world, had conceded an expected goals of 3.43. Now, let me add some more context into that. Bournemouth conceded 2 of that XG, or just over 2 of that XG, in the opening game of the season against Liverpool, who we know are probably one of the better sides in the Premier League, probably the best attack in the league, let's say. And we also know there was a lot of, let's say, difficult circumstances going into that game for Bournemouth in terms of Diakate, one of the centre-backs that they bought, only had, I think, 2 days training session. So, the last 4 games, Bournemouth have been phenomenal defensively. Only one of those 4 games they've conceded an extra over 0.5, and that was against Brighton. So, that defensive unit, I feel like even me, who's been big on that Bournemouth defence, let's say, have underestimated how good they actually are. So, full credit to Iraola. That's why I've gone with Petrovic in goal and Senesi. Also, adding on to a Senesi Defcon. Senesi has the aerial presence in the box. He's a brilliant pick on a free hit and just a brilliant option overall for FPL. I've also gone to Tarkowski. West Ham at home. We know West Ham have a lot of problems right now with Graham Potter. He might not even be here by the time the international break comes. Tarkowski obviously very, very good with Defcon. Has hit every single game so far. Listen, it is a lock in the free hit in my eyes going with Tarkowski. And I've also gone with Gabriel. I feel like that third defender was very, very difficult to pick. Obviously, there's other options. For example, Pedro Porro, who I have on the bench against Wolves at home. But I've gone to Gabriel. The reason I've gone to Gabriel is I think the Arsenal-Newcastle game, first of all, will be low scoring. I also don't think, let's say, Newcastle's attacking dynamics have, let's say, clicked so far. There's been a lot of change, obviously, with Alexander Isak leaving, Gordon sending off. Elanga hasn't, let's say, quite clicked yet, I'm guessing, because that's why Eddie hasn't really played him in the Premier League that much. So I've gone with Gabriel. Listen, also aerial presence in the box at attacking corners. Newcastle, as I said, haven't clicked. Could Gabriel get, let's say, Defcon potential with balls coming into the box for Woltemade? Could Gabriel header them away? Potentially. So I've gone with Gabriel. But listen, I feel like that spot in that free hit could be changed. But let's get onto the midfield. Now, let's get onto the midfield. And I feel like this name is a lock in every single free hit team. And that will be Semenyo. Listen, Leeds away is a brilliant fixture. As I said, Bournemouth are such a brilliant side overall. And I feel like Iraola as a manager is still severely underrated. But listen, Semenyo started the season brilliantly. There's no way you go without him on a free hit. I've also gone with a double City midfield, but I feel like this could potentially change. I've gone to Reinders. Listen, Man City and Burnley at home, that is a brilliant fixture. And I feel like Burnley at home is a game where you will see Manchester City obviously monopolise a lot of the possession. Also, we saw it, let's say, in the first game against Wolves, where Reinders then also had a lot of time and ability to crash the box. And we know Reinders can do that very well. He's shown it, let's say, in some regard for AC Milan last year, scored 10 league goals, for example. So Reinders on a free hit is not a bad option. But of course, I feel like he will probably be the least, like you'll see the other 2 City players that I picked. He'll probably be the one that will be willing to change, if that makes sense. But listen, I've also gone with Phil Foden. He has to be on a lock on a free hit in my eyes. Because I feel like Phil Foden's upside, especially for that Burnley fixture, so high. We know what Phil Foden can do. We know the ability Phil Foden has. And I feel like the last couple games, even in the Club World Cup, he was doing a lot better. But the last couple games in the Premier League had been brilliant. For example, against Manchester United, playing in that number 10 role. We know him and Erling Haaland have a brilliant connection. Obviously, Phil Foden got his goal. Got assist against Napoli, which is a very, very difficult side. Against Arsenal, again, that one, I would say, was a bit more game state dependent. 60th minute, he got a sub for Nathan Ake. Manchester City obviously went to a backfire for like one of the first times I've ever seen Pep Guardiola set up so defensively. It was almost like a Jose Mourinho type performance from Pep Guardiola. But listen, against Burnley, that won't be the case. There's no way City are going to play a back 5 in that game. We know Phil Foden's going to play, especially with the injuries that City have. So I think he's a brilliant option on a free hit. In the eyes, my other option from West Ham, for Everton against West Ham, brilliant fixture. We know how good Everton have been at home in terms of defensively. West Ham, as I said before, they are shambles. Defensively are shambles. The keeper situation with Areola, Hermansen, from the guy they brought in from Leicester, whoever they play, hasn't been nowhere near good enough. And I'll be honest, if the reports are correct that Graham Potter will be sacked after these next 2 games, you'll be silly not to target it. I'm going with Diaz over Grealish, by the way, just because I think Diaz has a bit more goal for it. Of course, doubling up on that Everton midfield is not a bad situation either, but I've gone with Diaz in this case just because he also has penalties and DEFCON potential. And Bruno Fernandes against Brentford away. I feel like this is another, let's say, position in the free hit that could be changed. I've gone with Bruno just because, listen, we've seen it with Bruno Fernandes, DEFCON potential, goal scoring potential in open play so far this season. He showed it at Chelsea. On penalties, Brentford, I feel like they've kind of struggled the last 2 games, especially in the Premier League, especially from a defensive point of view. Could that be something that United target or exploit? Potentially. You could also go with Brian Mbeumo as well. I think Brian Mbeumo probably has less route to points, but has more open play goal for it than someone like Bruno Fernandes. Also, with Brian Mbeumo facing his previous club in Brentford. I know people love narrative sometimes. I feel like that's a brilliant narrative to attack. So that could be a potential option if you want to go there with Brian Mbeumo. Or potentially even like a Mateus Cunha, because we know he's back for Manchester United now. He probably will start that game against Brentford. So I think those couple picks could be very interesting. But I do think you probably do want a Manchester United midfielder in there on a free hit. Now let's get on to the attack. Okay, so let's look at that attack. And one of the names is going to be a lock-in. And that's Erling Haaland. No complaints about it. Burnley at home is a brilliant fixture. He started the season brilliantly. His goal against Arsenal was phenomenal. Brilliant running power, by the way, from Erling Haaland. And listen, he's the best captaincy option by far this week. You're going to pick Erling Haaland. The next man is João Pedro. And this is a player and, let's say, position that I was a bit stuck in. Because I'm not too sure what other forwards stand out. The only one I was thinking was Richarlison, again, against Wolves at home. Tottenham, offensively, I've looked alright. But again, minutes. Minutes are a risk with Richarlison. So I'm not too sure if I would start him. But obviously, the upside is very, very high with Richarlison, especially against a Wolves team that haven't been good defensively. But I've gone to João Pedro just because I think he's slightly safer for minutes. Again, like I said, the FPL community love narratives. João Pedro against his former club in Brighton. Could he potentially want to, let's say, perform to a greater level? Potentially, because we know players sometimes love proving a point, even though João Pedro has no point to prove because he was brilliant for Brighton. But you never know kind of thing, innit? So I've gone to João Pedro. But again, that's another area, let's say, where his minutes could potentially be reduced going into that Brighton game just because Chelsea obviously do have a Champions League fixture between Game Week 6 and Game Week 7. So that is something I would keep an eye on. But again, I don't think there's any other forwards that really stand out. Unless, obviously, you maybe get rid of, let's say, Petrovic and go with Ivan Nilsson as your third Bournemouth player against Leeds away. That's not too bad. That could be a potential option. But other than that, I think this is a very, very strong free hit team. I know some people are going to play the free hit this week. That's why I made this video. To be honest, that was my initial plan going into this season. Playing my free hit. But after seeing how Erling Haaland started the season, he's an asset that I want longer term and not just for 1 week. But listen, this is my free hit for Game Week 6. Let me know if you guys are playing it down below. Make sure you guys like the video, comment your thoughts on the team, and subscribe to the channel. And we will be back soon.